The playoffs are drawing anticipatingly near, and the fantasy hockey coverage on the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast is not stopping. That's why you're tapped into the Tuesday episode. We're breaking down a league-wide injury update and feasting our eyes on the top goal scorers in the NHL.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You heard the music. You know what time it is. It's time for the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. I'm joined, as always, inside the lab by my esteemed co-host, Mr. Steele Rodin. And on this side of the microphone, it's your boy, Big Flip Livingstone. Massive, huge, large shout out to the everydayers holding us down, making us your first listen every single day. We wouldn't be here without y'all. We're seeing all of the love. Shout out to everyone out there in their finals, taking home championships and showing us that love. We appreciate it, and we hope we're going to reciprocate it all playoffs long. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Steele, you and I always try and keep these episodes to 30 minutes so we get people in and out and back to their busy lives with all of the information for the NHL and fantasy and betting in their back pocket. So I'm going to try and keep this tight. League-wide injury update. There's some big names here making moves that I think we should talk about. Maybe most importantly, Ville Husso for the Detroit Red Wings. I don't know what this is going to mean, but you can't help but feel with this team starting to play better, these kinds of things can kind of snowball in terms of good energy. We'll talk about it. Sergachev, Oshie, and we're going to feast our eyes and ears. I should have said that off the top, Steele. Shout out to everybody out there on Apple, Spotify. Make sure you smash that 5-star review. It helps Steele and I out in a huge way. We appreciate that feedback. We're going to break down the top 5, maybe the top 10, Steele. Sounds like our lists have ballooned a little bit. Top goal scorers in the game based off of Kaprizov's most recent 40-goal season. All kinds of goal scorers popping off Tuesday's bets. Speaking of popping off, right over to you, my brother. What are you looking at in terms of these injuries? Take it wherever you want to go. Sergachev, I think, is also huge. So if you want to talk about that, I have a quote up here from John Cooper. Wherever you want to go, because I think Husso and Sergachev could be big, considering both Detroit and Tampa have playoff aspirations. That's no disrespect to Washington, but I'm going to count them out just for fun.
Yeah, and I'm going to start with Mikhail Sergachev because I don't think the Ville Husso update is as important to them right now. Again, we talked about who's going to make it. I don't think it's going to be Detroit at this point. It's the New York Islanders and Pittsburgh that I'm going with in the last 5 games of the schedule. And Ville Husso has just had a very disappointing season. They've been through 3-4 goaltenders in Detroit: James Reimer, Alex Lyon, Ville Husso, and he's been disappointing. He's been injured, so not much that I have to say on Ville Husso, but Mikhail Sergachev is a big talking point right now because Tampa Bay has been they've got a firecracker on their behind right now. They have locked their place into the postseason. They're a dangerous team. We know that they've struggled at times throughout this year, but they're one of the most dangerous teams in the NHL right now. Vasilevsky, Nikita Kucherov leading the entire league with 136 points. Steven Stamkos, again, he might be mentioned on the top goal scorers and later in this episode. Who knows? He's got an absolute one-time, an absolute bomb over there. But they've got so much variety and so much dimension to their game that getting Mikhail Sergachev back into the lineup, it doesn't really matter right now for fantasy-wise because the seasons are practically over. But if he's able to get back, and again, that was a serious injury, just to get back potentially into the postseason, that would be huge for the Tampa Bay Lightning.
And that's how I think I'm looking at it as well, Steele, because even before reading into, and I got the quote up here from head coach John Cooper in a second, who basically shot down any chance at him being back for the start of the playoffs.
Yeah.
But the fact that he didn't shoot down being back for that first round series or the playoffs at large, I think is massive for a Tampa Bay team. And unfortunately, you and I know this very well from all of the times that the Toronto Maple Leafs have run through Tampa Bay, both in the regular season and postseason over the last, 3 or 4 years, that this Tampa Bay team does not get rattled or phased. They go down a couple of goals, they get punched, they get knocked down, they don't get knocked out, they come back at you. And I think knowing that kind of moxie of this team, you can't help but feel that they ain't playing for first round. They're going at this thing like they can go on another run. And as much as they, losing him is being knocked down, they are not knocked out. They've been solid over their last 10. I was just looking at that. Is it 7-2-1? 7-2-1 over their last 10 games, right at the most opportune time of the season. That was a very nasty injury for Sergachev. So this isn't like he's coming back from a bad hammy or a cracked finger or something like that. Fractures in the tibia and fibula, and has only resumed skating about 3.5 weeks ago. This is just one of those caveats. He's an important piece, could be massive for the Tampa Bay Lightning. We got to talk about it. Let me hit you with my take on Ville Husso just super quickly. Very, very quickly, actually, because he's been, for me, a player in my league that I know someone traded for in our Keeper Dynasty League, thinking, they want a piece of what's going on with the Red Wings, and he has been a big disappointment, and he's been out since February 13th. I guess I would say this, Steele. If he does come back and he does actually play okay, his value is going to go back up in terms of what I think of him for next season. I'm not saying drastically. It's just those are some of the caveats that you start looking at players headed into the offseason. Is he still a disappointment? Am I still thinking Alex Lyon has earned the crease? For sure. I'm just trying to take a look at this as a bit of a fantasy angle, and I'm intrigued to see if he does come back, even for a couple of games. Can he show me that he's still relevant? Because right now, Steele, he's really taken a huge dive in terms of fantasy value.
He has, and even just going into last season where he played his most games in a year, 56 games played in his first year with the Detroit Red Wings. He had a decent record. He had an okay record. He was 26, 22, and 7, but he had an .896 save percentage and a 3.11 goals against average. And again, he only played 19 games this year because he's been pretty bad. Again, he has a winning record. He's 9-5-2, but an .892 save percentage and a 3.55 goals against average is not going to do a lot of good for your fantasy hockey team out there. So I know there's a little bit of investment in this guy, but besides that kind of breaking out season with St. Louis, where he went 25-7-6, and it was a little bit of a overachieving kind of start to his career.
An outlier.
Yeah, and he's fallen down, and I really thought that he could have been that guy for the Detroit Red Wings that could really sort of lead them in that right direction and kind of start forming that Yzerman plan and kind of structuring it a little bit. And he just hasn't been that guy. And they've had to really fall back on Alex Lyon and James Reimer.
Very, very lucky that Alex Lyon has done what he's been able to do for this team. Just a very valuable goaltender Alex Lyon has been proving to be over the course of the last couple of seasons, kind of out of nowhere. What's not coming out of nowhere is some of the top goal scorers in the game. You know all about these players, but the conversation needs to be had, Steele, because when you dig into some of these numbers, maybe we're not giving some of these players nearly enough credit. Cough, cough, tease to another Tampa Bay Lightning player that's going to be given some love by me. We'll talk about our Tuesday bets as well. One of the last jam-packed nights of the betting board on the calendar year, Steele. It hurts a bit of my heart to say it, but that means the postseason is around the corner, and so is Lord Stanley, baby. Steele and I are your source for everything in the postseason. Predictions, X Factors, series breakdowns, who wins in how many games. We got you covered. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. It's playoff season, baby, and the NBA and the NHL, with baseball in full swing, FanDuel is your spot to bet on every single game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150 win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks. Whew, that sounds good, Steele. All on the app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. What are you waiting for, Steele? I'm not waiting. I'm on FanDuel every single night. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day long? You have to turn down the volume with all that shouting. Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channel app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Thank you so much. Hit the subscribe button, hit the follow button, leave a 5-star review. We appreciate all that love and support you show us. Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning is when you can find our episodes. Flip.
Yes.
Kirill Kaprizov hit 40-goal season for the third consecutive year. I threw a tweet out there congratulating it, kind of boosting him up a little bit. And I put the question out there. Is he a top 5 goal scorer in the National Hockey League? We got a few responses out there. We got some lists from our listeners as well.
Yes, we did.
So we're going to talk about that on today's episode. The top 5, maybe even the top 10 goal scorers in the NHL right now. And I think that you and I are going to have very similar, if not the exact same top 5s.
Probably.
But after that, I think we'll have remotely the same players, maybe in different positions.
Let me just say this before we get into it. I looked at it because if I look at it just pure goal scoring, Steele, there might be, and I'm not talking about like effectiveness to your team to win, being a fantasy stud in other categories, just a pure goal scorer, because, I'm looking at it as all of the other things that come with being this kind of elite talent and fantasy. So because guys like Adrian Kempe, guys like maybe, even on the peripheral and Reinhardt after this season, you could start making the case that they're in there, but they are not in the conversation of the players we're going to talk about. So in terms of like pure goal scoring, I had to look at it in terms of more of a rounded out game and more of a fantasy beast. So that's why number 1 for me is clear. It's Auston Matthews. You and I don't need to talk about that too much more, other than there's no one in the game today, not even, other than Alex Ovechkin, who even comes close to being able to put up multiple 60-goal seasons.
Yeah.
And that's no disrespect to the guy at number 2 on the list, which I think you and I can agree on as well, which is David Pastrnak. Auston Matthews is on another level right now. And if you don't like it, check the stats. I say it every time. Yeah, we're Toronto fans. But when it comes to Auston Matthews, there's no homerism here. There's no bias. It's straight up sensational. And I'd actually leave it at this, Steele. I like to say that. If Auston Matthews is wearing almost any other jersey, especially in, let's say, a major American market, we are hearing way more about the rest of his game. We're not hearing detractors about how he gets easy tap-ins and whatnot. You are going to hear a lot more about it. So there's that. And at number 2 is David Pastrnak. And then I think this conversation gets a little bit more intriguing.
Yeah, I mean, there's no denying, even as a non-Leaf fan, that he is one of the
best
best goal scorers. If not, he is the best goal scorer right now in the NHL. And I agree. Auston Matthews at number 1, David Pastrnak at number 2. David Pastrnak, again, just another guy who has multiple 40-goal seasons. He's had, 8 straight years of 35-plus goals and 5 straight years of 40-plus goals with a 61 piece in there. David Pastrnak is the second best goal scorer in the NHL. Not a question on that. I think for most people, I think everyone can agree on that order so far. Auston Matthews 1, David Pastrnak 2. I've got Leon Draisaitl number 3. The guy's put up 50 pieces in back-to-back years. He's got a 40-goal season this year. With 102 points. He has 3 straight seasons with 100-plus points, but 55 goals, 52 goals. 3 times in his career, he's had 50-plus goals. So Leon Draisaitl at number 3. He's an absolute juggernaut on the power play. I believe 45% of his goals. He has a total of 346 goals in his career. On the power play, he has 145. So I don't know the exact number, but I'm going to go 45% around there. That's a lot. He's a juggernaut on the power play. He does so well for them.
What's interesting too, Steele, it's in the same kind of vein about when players have really good seasons and fans try to detract from them in certain ways. And one of those narratives that I hear out there, about Matthews, even about Pastrnak at times, especially Matthews this season, just because of how much attention he's getting for obvious reasons, is, they beat up on the bad teams. He scores 3 and 4 and 5 against the bad teams. Can you please run back the tape to the Wayne Gretzky era when he's making these goaltenders are making saves like it looks like me out there on 18 wobbly pops? Those guys did what? They beat up on the worst in the game because they are the best in the game. That's what elite players do. They expose these situations. So I'm not here for any of this hate. Draisaitl at number 3. I have a chart up here, by the way, Steele. Since 2016-17, shocker, the year that Auston Matthews entered the league, Auston Matthews has the most goals in the NHL. He has 30 and change more than Ovechkin. I think I'm looking at this number. It's 39 more.
Yeah, 39.
Something like that. then Draisaitl, then Pastrnak, then my fourth and fifth players. And I'll round it out quick because then I think let's come back from the break and maybe talk about some of these other guys on the list. Because for me, and hit me with your take, of course, those three make sense. Then it's McDavid, and then it's McKinnon. And I have them at almost like a 4A, 4B. They're not 5 for me because then I start sliding in. I would slide in maybe Kaprizov at 5. Then I'm looking at maybe guys like Rantanen, Brayden Point, and maybe Ovi. So I'm going to go with McDavid and McKinnon to round out my top 5. And I think all 5 of these players, it's almost interchangeable after Matthews, but I'm still going to like our list of 1, 2, 3, how we have it.
Yeah, and I have the exact same top 5. Auston Matthews 1, David Pastrnak 2, Leon Draisaitl 3, Connor McDavid 4, Nathan McKinnon 5. I think Connor McDavid, even though, again, he's such a playmaker, he's a pass-first mentality type of player.
Only because he wants to be. That's what I was looking at this. If he wanted to score more, he could.
Yeah, but then I really do feel it diminishes the entire team and what they can achieve as a team when he's again, shoot the puck as much as you want, but he is a playmaker. He sets up his teammates, and that's what has happened since the firing of Jay Woodcroft as well, and then he just popped off. So I do see what you're saying, but again, this guy's put up 1, 2,
in terms of
3.
the talent in this conversation.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, but I'm agreeing with you in terms of how Edmonton needs him to play for them to win.
Yeah, Connor McDavid though, he has 1, 2, 4 40-plus goal season, a 64 piece last year. He's got 31 with 99 assists. I mean, he comes in at number 4, and then Nathan McKinnon. I was struggling. with this number 5 position, but I ended up going with Nathan McKinnon because of the back-to-back 40-plus seasons, the seasons he's currently on. He's got a couple more games, and he has a chance to hit 50 piece for the first time in his career. Nathan McKinnon comes in at number 5. You and I have the exact same list. For our top 5, I've got a few more names that we can just kind of throw back and forth at each other, and we'll continue this conversation after the break. And then, of course, we will get to big time bets. But first, this episode is brought to you by Sleeper. We are down to the final 5 games of the regular season, and teams are still battling for position in all 4 divisions. Regardless of where your team is in the current standings, I want to remind you that you could win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number 1 choice for daily fantasy sports, and especially daily fantasy hockey, because that's what we do here. Because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. Fans can also play fantasy NFL, NBA, MLB, CFB on the Sleeper app, and entries can be made in under a minute. All you have to do is pick whether studs like McDavid, Ovechkin, McKinnon, Hellebuck, and if they'll record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more in a given game. To win a 100-time bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me right, Locked On Fantasy Hockey fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So start paying attention and nail your picks so you can start winning big. Use promo code LOCKEDONNHL and you'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to hit the subscribe, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. We appreciate all the love and support you show us Monday through Friday. Flip, over to you, continuing the conversation of the best NHL goal scorers right now. We just listed off the top 5. We have the exact same top 5. This is where it gets a little bit tricky, I think. But I think, as you alluded to, we both have Kirill Kaprizov at number 6.
Kaprizov's got to be right there in the mix, only because, and why he falls out of the top 5, Steele, is he's the only player out of those 5 that, to me, has kind of not gotten it done to the point where he has to carry his team. He's the only superstar on that team. So I'm not trying to say that he hasn't done it. I'm just saying that when you look at times when Matthews goes, when Draisaitl goes, when McDavid and McKinnon go, their teams go. And maybe that's not exactly Kaprizov's fault. And out of all of those guys, he still has the least amount of games played in the NHL, and he's the youngest. So he still has some time to prove. But in terms of on-ice success and postseason goal scoring, he's fallen flat in the postseason a little bit too. When I dug into those numbers, they're okay. They're not great. And when you're looking at it, the other players on this list, they're all great. Even in the postseason, they get it done. So Kaprizov falls just off that list for those reasons. What's your take on that?
I agree because I have Kirill Kaprizov at number 6 as well. And the
Yep.
playoff stats, again, this Minnesota, I said it before, they're just an above average team in the NHL. They're still fighting for a playoff spot. I think all hope is lost at this point, but I agree with you. The playoff stats aren't great for Kirill Kaprizov. He had one season, 2021-22 playoffs, where he had 7 goals in 6 games. But this is a team that has struggled to get out of the first round in the postseason many times, and he is the only true superstar there. I mean, if it wasn't for the COVID season where it was shortened to 55, 56 games, he could potentially have 4 consecutive seasons with 40 plus goals. So
that's a good point.
He's right there. He's outside the top 5. He comes in at number 6. But if he puts up another 40-goal season, which I believe he's going to next year, he's going to crack the top 5, in my opinion, if he can do that 4 seasons in a row. I think you and I will have the same guy at number 7. Brayden Point comes in at number 7 for me. You have Brayden Point at number 7?
I'm nodding one. Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Because
all right.
And I just, he was honorable mention for me. I don't know if I would slot him in right at number 7, but if terms of just how I have him on my list in honorable mentions, I'm just going to say he's 7 because that's where he is after Kaprizov and after the players that I've already talked about. Because of back into the same vein of what I was discussing, Steele. Brayden Point, Mikko Rantanen, McKinnon, McDavid, Pastrnak, Draisaitl, Ovi, Matthews, all of these teams to varying degrees. Obviously, the Toronto Maple Leafs have had their own struggles. The Edmonton Oilers have had their struggles in the postseason. Ovi's won a cup. Pasternak's won a cup. McKinnon's won a cup. Brayden Point's won a cup. And they get it done in the postseason. So they're goal scorers, yes, but they're also clutch performers. And that's why also right after Brayden Point, I think Mikko Rantanen very much so deserves to be in that conversation right there after Brayden Point.
Mikko Rantanen at number 8?
I would slide him in if we're doing a top 10. He comes in at the 8th, 9th, or 10th spot. This is where my list was just honorable mention. And if it were looking at it closer, I would have to give my rankings more of a close. I probably would put actually Ovi ahead of both of these guys. But Rantanen, in terms of the last, since 16, when we're looking at this chart, he has 1 less goal than Brayden Point in that same time period. So he deserves to be there.
Yeah, he cracks the top 10 for me, and I actually do have him at number 8, but I feel like I should have Alexander Ovechkin here at number 8, and I do know that it's a down season, but he is still at 29 goals. He can hit 30 goals in his next couple of games.
He deserves to be there.
He deserves to be on the list. 42 the year before, 50, and then it just keeps going. 48, 51, 49, 50, 53, 51.
He's the best goal scorer to ever play in the NHL. Is he the best right now? No, but he is the best ever, and he is going to pass Gretzky.
He is going to pass Gretzky, and then I would love to see the race with Auston Matthews potentially. If he can do something about that. There's a long way to go for Auston Matthews. If we're still in
this pod in 18 years, Steele, I'm going to have some questions to ask, but it's not out of the realm of possibility.
It's not out of the realm. So Mikko Rantanen comes at number 8. I think, Mikko Rantanen at number 8 for both of us. I want to throw Alexander as like an 8B right now, but it's a little bit of a down season.
Call him 9.
I want to throw these two names at you for 9 and 10 because I wonder who you might put there, but William Nylander's had a back-to-back 40-goal season as well. And then I want to throw Sidney Crosby in there potentially just as a conversation because, again, 40 back-to-back 40-goal seasons for Sidney Crosby too. I know there's a lot of other names out there, but just what he has been able to do this season with the players he has around him. I know he's played with, more than half the season with Jake Gensel, but he left. But at 36, soon to be 37 years old, putting up 40 goals, again, I think he deserves to be in the conversation, and maybe he falls out, maybe he falls in, but I think I'm putting him at number 9.
He for sure falls in, Steele, because you know how I feel about Sid, and he slides in 9 goals behind Brayden Point and 8 goals behind Mikko Rantanen for the most goals since 2016, with 252 ahead of players like Nikita Kucherov, Brad Marchand, John Tavares, Chris Kreider, Kyle Connor. And one of the players, though, Steele, even down the list and next after all of those guys, because of his talent and because of his ability to get it done in the postseason, Steven Stamkos makes my number 10.
Yeah.
And let me just explain why, because look, this is where this list can get very subjective, but let's talk about goal scoring doesn't just happen in the regular season. When we do top 10s and we do fantasy, playoffs don't count, right? We don't have to count what they do in the postseason. And Steven Stamkos has led his team and done it Steven Stamkos has 45 career postseason goals and 95 points in 121 games. My goodness me, Steele. He's an absolute stud. Not many guys shoot it out the dot like him on the one-timer. He's up there with Ovi. And when you're in a conversation with Ovi and goal scoring, you deserve to be on this list.
Steven Stamkos. I think I would just put William Nylander above Steven Stamkos right now, currently.
I don't hate it.
But I mean, Steven Stamkos deserves to be in the conversation. Let us know who you would have in your top 5, who you would have in your top 10.
That was a good one, by the way.
That was a really good one. I love the conversation. Let us know in the comments below. DM us on Twitter who you would have in your top 10 for the best NHL goal scorers right now. Let's get over to big time bets, though, where the money is made. Lots of action on Tuesday night. Flip. I'm really loving these picks right now. If you don't mind, I would like to kick it off.
Do it.
First pick of the night. I know it's been a little bit of a downward trajectory for the Florida Panthers over the last 2 to 3 weeks. They're 3-5-2 in their last 10 games.
Yep.
Panthers are taking on the Ottawa Senators, though. Panthers on the puck line at plus 106 against the Ottawa Senators. 8 wins in their last 10 against the Senators, and 6 of those 8 wins were by 3 or more goals. So I'm taking the Panthers on the puck line against these Senators again.
Puck line king is back.
Absolutely love that comment you made to me the other day about, like the Jonas Corposalo when he was getting out, he was getting sunlight in the eyes. It's like that was the brightest spot, the bright spot of the entire season for the Ottawa Senators. I got to mention that, but Panthers on the puck line. That's my first pick, plus 106.
I like it, Steele, and I got a puck line to go right back at you. And if I get burned betting on the far better teams with something to play for, going up against literally the worst teams in the league with nothing to play for, I don't care. I'm not betting a big amount of money. I'm parlaying things together. And this is where I'm at with this LA Kings team, because also it's not just that. They're playing much better. They own the Anaheim Ducks, 8-1-1. 6 of those wins of their last 8 wins against the Ducks by 2 or more goals. Give me the Kings on the puck line. They're finding their offense at an opportune time. We've talked about Trevor Moore. We've talked about how we think this team, though, I got a lot of question marks around it still, Steele. They have been far up and down this season. They've had the Edmonton Oilers number. If they have to run through Edmonton again, the way Edmonton is playing this season, I'm going to give the edge to Edmonton, but this is why I just need this stuff to start, and I'm excited to hear all of our previews and predictions. Make sure you guys don't miss that. We're going series by series, round by round.
Could be back to back to back, 3 consecutive postseason first-round matchups for the Oilers and LA Kings. So it's going to be tough. I think the Kings players might be having nightmares about that matchup against Connor McDavid once again.
I agree.
Second pick of the night comes from the Maple Leafs Devils game.
Same.
Over 6.5 in this matchup.
Yes,
bang. Let's absolutely get it. Minus 130 right now. Bang. 7 have gone over the number. The average total goals in the last 10 games is 7.3. So I love the over 6.5. When these two teams get together, it seems to be, mostly high scoring games. There have been a couple of really low scoring games as well, but it's typically gone over the number, and the numbers have proven it. That's the second pick of the night. Final pick of the night. This is going to be a really good game to keep an eye on because of the standings in the Eastern Conference. But I'm going to go with the Capitals on the money line at plus 128 against the Detroit Red Wings right now. And these are two teams that, again, I know the Red Wings hold on to that second spot, but they're 4-4-2 in their last 10. The Washington Capitals are 3-5-2. So it's not a huge difference in discrepancy between the last 10 games for these two clubs. But I love the odds at plus 128 for the Capitals on the money line.
I'm liking that, Steele. Speaking of the Eastern Conference wildcard race, Tampa's not moving from that spot. It's looking like Toronto gets a big win or two here this week. That's going to be how it is.
Locked up.
That's not detracting from Tampa at all. And I'm going to hit you guys with 2 picks for my lock of the night. Yeah, I'm doing it. And on FanDuel, you can do the super same game parlay. You can do these 2 and add them into my 2 other picks. And I highly suggest doing that. So I say LA Kings on the puck line. I'm going the over in the New Jersey-Toronto game. Joseph Woll's also in the cage. He's let in a lot of softies. Ilya Samsonov had the cage Monday night. So I'm liking that angle for the over. And then the 2 picks are, number 1, the Tampa Bay Lightning have proven over the last 5 or 6 seasons that going into Amalie Arena in South Florida, Steele, shout out to the South Florida Rodin family. That's some love for the South Floridians down there. The Tampa Bay Lightning have built that arena into a fortress. They are one of the toughest teams to play against on home ice. They're doing it once again this year, 23-10-4 on home ice. Columbus rolls into town. The Lightning are licking their chops. The Lightning are rolling, and they're 8-2-0 against the Columbus Blue Jackets in their last 10. So we're going to take the low odd on the Tampa Bay Lightning on the money line, minus 250, whatever it is. And we're going to package it with my boy, Brayden Point.
There you
This
go.
has just been a serendipitous episode on purpose, Steele. Brayden Point is having one of the most underrated seasons in the league for a 43-plus goal scorer. Also, you know when I read into these angles about anytime points because they don't usually have a ton of odds, he was held off the score sheet last game before going 4 points in straight games. So you're going to get a lot more value for the anytime point. Anytime point, Brayden Point. Tampa Bay Lightning on the money line, LA Kings on the puck line, and over in that Toronto Maple Leafs game, Steele. Let's make some playoff loot, baby.
What's the lock of the night once again?
Lock of the night is Brayden Point and Tampa together.
All right, perfect. That's the lock of the night for Flip. My lock of the night is the Panthers on the puck line at plus 106. Those are the picks. Those are the locks for Tuesday's action. Big NHL betting board for all of us to take place on. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey podcast your first listen every single day. Once again, Locked On Sports Today has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. You can also find it on the free Amazon Fire TV channel app. So make sure you go check it out on both those options there. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with all your bets tonight, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.